Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, optimize, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Patty Aubery. Hi, Patty.
Hi there.
It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm excited about today's conversation. I'm very passionate about doing what your passion is and following your purpose. And we're going to talk about the combination of purpose and having a business out of it, and how do you combine both, and how do you help entrepreneurs achieve that balance, or I don't know if you call it a balance, but achieve that combination, right? Complement one with another, which would be great conversation. But first, I'm going to read your bio. So, Patty, you're a best-selling author, speaker, and transformational coach, and you're known for helping people get unstuck and step into their power. As the former president of the Canfield Training Group and co-creator of a billion-dollar brand, Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is incredible. I think we all heard about it. You've been a strategic force behind some of the world's most recognized personal development platforms. And today you empower speakers, authors, and coaches to show up, speak up, and be seen.
That's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's you.
And then some.
And then some. It's amazing. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit more, expand a little bit of the story of your professional journey, and you can also add your personal journey, but more about you. How did you get to where you are today?
I got on a crazy train. Well, I started in this industry about 35 years ago. And the first big project I did was the Chicken Soup for the Soul, the first book. We had an idea to do one book, and if we could make it a New York Times bestseller, we'd get higher speaking fees, period. So we started to collect stories, and we put this book together. It took us about 4 years to actually put it together, believe it or not, only to find out that nobody wanted to buy the book. And so because we were new in publishing, we didn't realize that you should always have an agent first, that you should shop your idea before it's a book, and do it the right way. But in hindsight, I'm glad that we didn't, because if we had shopped our idea in the beginning, nobody would have bought it anyway, because nobody wanted to buy the book when it was done. So after being rejected by every publisher on the planet, our agent gave us our book back and said, "I'm really sorry, I can't sell this." So we had to get really creative and figure out a way that we could sell it. So it's like, how is this obstacle actually an opportunity? And so we finally found a publisher, real small publisher out of Florida, who said, we'll take it on, but you have to promise to sell 20,000 books. And if you don't, you have to pay us for the print run. We're like, okay, we'll do anything. And so that was about 500 million books ago. But it didn't really start that way. It really started as just one book. And then what happened was after about 14 months, we hit a bestseller list, and we were like pounding the pavement. We were doing everything we could possibly think of to market this book. We didn't stop. And I see a lot of people in today's world that just bring out a book and they try to market it for a couple of weeks, and it didn't really work, which is kind of crazy because books don't typically work in a few weeks. And so after promoting, marketing, doing everything we could, hit a bestseller list, and then it just started to kind of grow and grow and grow. And then our publisher called and said, "Hey, we should do a second serving." And so we did a second serving. And then somebody called us, a gal by the name of Marcy Scheimoff, said, hey, I have this idea. She was literally at a silence retreat and couldn't talk for like 9 days. So we got a fax. This is back in the fax days, right? This is like the early 90s. And she said, I had this great idea, but I can't talk for 10 days or whatever it is. So on the 10th day, she called us and said, I have this idea to do chicken soup for the women's soul. I think it'd be a great idea. And my partner, Jack, said, I think it's amazing. I said, I think that's a stupid idea. Women are buying the books already. He said, no, hold on. Let's just explore this. And then she said, and by the way, you're a man, so I should do the book. And so that opened up our book kind of publishing journey to having other co-authors and different titles and so forth. So that was just this beginning of this massive idea that became really huge and crazy. And it took the next 20 years of my life, and 300 titles later, I learned everything you could possibly have to learn about the publishing industry, how to market titles from golfer soul to Christian soul to, expectant mother soul, and so on. So that's kind of how I just kind of got thrown in, and I sort of thought this was normal. And then my publisher would call and say, by the way, this isn't normal. Save your money and write down everything you're grateful for every single day. So that was how it all kind of started. And the rest is just kind of unfolded,
That's amazing. So at the beginning, what made you think about where did chicken soup for the soul came from? Like
Well, it was my partner's
idea.
Well, Jack Canfield, who's my business partner, his first thing was, why don't we take all these stories that people tell from the stage? Because we were speaking a lot then, and we were mostly teaching teachers how to facilitate self-esteem in the classroom, believe it or not. And so he said, all these stories, people are always asking me after a talk, do you have that story in a book? Do you have that story in a book? And I'd say, no, it's on my tapes. And it was mostly women. And they would say, I don't listen to tapes. I'm in and out of my car. I read, in the evenings. And so he said, I think we're supposed to put all these stories in a book. And I was 25. It's like, okay, why not? And so that was kind of the beginning. We didn't have a title for it. And when the book was finished, we still didn't have a title. And Jack was meditating, and he got this idea, chicken soup. And he asked, like, in his meditation, what is chicken soup? And then he saw, America's sick. It needs chicken soup for its soul. And we called it chicken soup for the soul.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's a great title now, but at the time it wasn't, because everybody thought it was a cookbook.
I can see that, but now I mean, who doesn't know about chicken soup for the soul, right?
It's crazy.
So it's totally crazy. Yeah, but at the time you can think of it different things. I mean, I can see that. So how did you develop from there to help empower speakers, authors, coaches, and do what you're doing today?
So what happened was, we built the business, we sold it in 2008. And then we kind of sat back. And one of our main focuses prior to that was teaching people how to present the content that we used. And because we had used all these different principles in building $1 billion book brand, which was at the time unheard of, nobody had ever done it in the nonfiction world. We thought, well, what if we could teach other people to go out and speak about these things and, spread the word? And we had a new book out called The Success Principles. And so it was going to help market that. And so we started to do that. And then that just started to kind of grow and grow and grow. But through the whole process of Chicken Soup for the Soul, as the president of the company, I was dealing with the business side, the marketing side, the licensing, the publisher. I had somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 1,000 co-authors and 30,000 contributors over time. So my life was pretty insane. I mean, if you can imagine, it's all creative people, and creative people are very interesting sometimes. And so people would call me when I would come out with a new book, like Chicken Soup for the Christian Soul, which was a New York Times bestseller that I wrote and released. And I wouldn't go and speak. I would say, oh no, I'm too busy. I'm running the business. And what I realized as I started to train other people was, what was I doing? I was hiding. And it was really comfortable for me to hide and give all my credit to Jack or to Mark Victor Hansen. Like, the guys were in the front. Nobody knew who the Wizard of Oz was behind the curtain. So I could just comfortably do my business stuff. I was very comfortable when it came to strategy and efficiency and, making things that, worth working for. And when I realized I'd been settling, and it literally took, Addie, it took my mom dying. And she said right before she died, I didn't raise a daughter to be invisible. It's time for you to show up and speak up and be seen. Take credit where credit's due. Promise me.
Wow.
And she called me out. This is like a day before she dies. And so, of course,
that's intense, Patty.
It was really intense. But it changed my world. It made me realize what nobody else was really saying. And so I sort of went on this journey to look at where I'd become so complacent and comfortable, which we do in business. We get comfortable and our budgets get too high, or we slack on some areas. And I was kind of not showing up for me and making it about others. So that was kind of a massively defining moment. And that's when I started to look at, what have I been waiting for? I've been waiting for someone else to give me permission to show up, to speak up. And so I decided to come out with a product called Permission Granted: How to Show Up, Speak Up, and Be Seen. I did a collaboration book with a bunch of other women, and we did a year-long program where I took them all through all these different principles, which held me accountable to hold them accountable. Sometimes we have to trick ourselves. It's like I could go to the gym alone, or I could get a trainer. So that was the beginning of that. And so now I work with men and women, but I really love to look at people's projects, what their passions are, and look at, okay, how is that going to work? I don't naysay ever. No dream is too big for me. I'm like, sky's the limit. If you can see, if you believe it, you got to see it. If you see it, you'll believe it and it'll happen. All that stuff. And so, so that's just kind of where I live. But I really look at, is your passion becoming a hobby, or is it becoming a business? And then how do we really look at all the different pieces of the business and what it's going to take to actually get out there and do the things you want to do? So whether it's speaking, whether it's writing a book, whether it's building a business, I work with mortgage brokers, real estate agents, lawyers, doctors, self-help people, authors, like it's all over the place. But I think because of my ADD, I'm really good at like seeing all the moving parts. And so one of my big things is I always see what's not working, which is a blessing and a total curse for my husband.
I bet. So tell me like about a mortgage broker. Okay. So how do you tie in the purpose, the passion into being a mortgage broker?
Well, I look at, like, I just did a talk a couple of weeks ago. Where are you settling? Where do you think that you need to be the only loan officer in your brokerage? Why don't you have a LOA, a loan officer assistant? And what part of you is staying stuck and not wanting to delegate? What stories are you telling yourself? Where would your time be more effectively used? And so it's interesting. We all have, from a human dynamic standpoint, we all have a lot of the same things. We have a lot of the same fears. We have a lot of the same beliefs that kind of keep us small. If I don't do it all, I won't be as valuable. And it's crazy, but it's just what is. And so I can look at that from a very neutral standpoint and say, well, imagine if we did hire this person that you're telling yourself you can't afford, but the reality is you can't afford not to. And so we look at the numbers and how those numbers will break even in no time, and then where they can go from there, and the scalability and the efficiency and less burnout, and also how are people using AI in today's world? It blows my mind that people are not completely embracing it, and only about 20% of the workforce is actually using it effectively, which I think is insane. So I teach a lot of that as well, on how they can get more efficient using different platforms and things.
Yeah, it's using the tools in order to actually make the dream come true. So it's all about looking at it when you can, if you're passionate about something, you have a goal, is like, how do you actually, what steps do you actually have to take, and how do you make it an actuality? That's what it sounds like you are coaching them through, with maintaining that goal alive, because otherwise it's just like, oh, I want to be this, or I want to be that, but how do you actually materialize it?
Absolutely. And there's so many ways that people can market to you in today's world. So it's not like it used to be, where you'd hire a business consultant, or you'd look on even on the internet when it was just the internet. Now you have Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and, X and all these different platforms of ways that people can promote and market to you. So one of the big things that I like to look at is help my clients decide what things are right for them and when are they right for them. Because I see a lot of people just buying in to whatever they read, and they're not doing their homework. They're not asking for referrals. They're not finding out who else has done this. Did the people deliver? And so really looking at, and also like, if you're going to spend a certain amount of money, how are you going to make that back?
Right.
I mean, if I'm going to spend 50,000 or 20,000 or whatever it is, I'm like, okay, I have to sell this much, or I have to do this to cover that, and a lot of people don't do that. Or people say, I hate my job. I just want to write a book, and they'll just like walk away from their job. And I'm like, wait. No, don't quit your day job. We're going to make a plan, and there's going to be a bridge to go from your day job to your dream job. And we're going to make sure it makes sense. And the people that listen, it's wonderful. The people that don't, it's not so great,
It's like in everything in life. I mean, that applies to everything. And I agree. Patty, you were talking about what made you switch to actually make sure that you are visible. You were running the business and then moved to that, and how you help people. We're all about systems here. It's the Systems Simplified podcast, right? We create systems for businesses. We create their standard operating procedures, their processes. What is your take on processes and actually having processes in order to achieve your dream or create your job into a job that you are passionate about and not just a hobby?
Well, I think systems are, if you don't have them, you have a job. If you do have them, you can have a company. I mean, I couldn't have done 18 books a year at the height of Chicken Soup for the Soul if I didn't have serious systems and processes in place. So I think it's really important. I don't think you're ever too small to start. The more that you can look at, what am I doing every single day that can be systematized, or what am I doing that should be delegated, or, I mean, simple things, simple things, down to your grocery list. It's like a lot of us are solo entrepreneurs. Like, look at everything that you eat, put it all into chat, ask for a grocery list, take it to the printer, have it copied. So you have a big stack, you fill it out as you go. Every time you remove something from the fridge, you check it off, you rip it off, you go to the grocery store. I mean,
love it.
It's like,
that's taking systems to a whole new level.
It's like simple stuff, right? But
right.
With ChatGPT and all these other plugins, I mean, life is so much easier. So I think it's massively important. And if you're not good at it, don't beat yourself up. Find somebody who is. And I think that's a huge issue. Like, in my life, Jack was a major systems person, and I was like out in the clouds. I'm going to go meet the president. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to ask for anything. He'd be hiding under a rock because he's much more of an introvert. Cross the T's, dot the I's. I'm like, okay, you do that. So it worked out pretty well. But at some point too, when I started running my own company, aside from the company that we had together, I had to look at where are my weaknesses. And so I hired somebody that is really efficient, the queen of operations, knows everything from software to banking to websites. I mean, you name it, she knows it. And I don't have to deal with that because I'm never, ever going to be good at it. And so if I try to set myself up that way, I'll most likely fail.
That makes sense. Makes total sense. And it's the right advice. You mentioned that you had to deal with creative all the time, and dealing with sometimes when we deal with creative people, which I love creative people, but sometimes the misconception is, well, I don't need systems because I'm creative, and systems is going to stifle my creativity. What do you say to that?
Good luck. I thought that way too, because I'm very creative. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And in the beginning, when I first started consulting and I sort of had my, side hustle, it was really hard. And I realized everything that I thought was irritating or took up too much time and I let my partner do, it was almost like these 360 moments of like, oh. And so I started to appreciate more and more the differences we had, the more I started doing some things where he wasn't involved. And I noticed it was becoming a little bit chaotic. I'm like, okay, got to dial this back. So, you have to live and learn, but the sooner you do it, the better.
Absolutely. I agree. Patty, if our listeners want to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, read your books, how can they do that?
You can go to my website or follow me on Instagram or Facebook. It's pattyaubery.com. And that's PATTYAU, B as in boy, ERY.com.
Awesome. And I definitely encourage our listeners to do that. And thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It's been a great interview. And thank you for sharing the moments, the defining moments for you, your journey and how you got to where you're at, because you definitely are helping entrepreneurs and are helping business owners to get to the next level and really really fulfill their dreams, right?
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here. Congratulations on 5 years of doing this. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.